So welcome, everybody, to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio. Today is Friday, November the 19th, 2021, and our call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. We'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And while we're waiting on Michael to get dialed in, I'll share a dream that I had. I told Michael, I said it was different from any dream that I've ever had. And we were all at like a timeshare place. It was like a house. And there was just lots of people there. And there outside the front door, there was a tree. And hanging from the limb of a tree was a basket that said, newsboy or newspaper boy or something like that. And inside of it was a loaf of bread wrapped up and a newspaper. And it had a phone number on it. And you called the phone number, and there was a person, and in this case it was a man, that just showed up and just spent time with the person who called the number and just listened to them, talked to them, was just company for them, and gave them some little gifts or whatever, and just held the space for whoever it was, you know. And I thought, wow, that is actually a really good idea, to have a number where people can call and just have somebody to be there for them. And actually, that's what this radio show is. You know, you call in, you press 1, you have concerns or questions or need help with a worksheet or just to talk. And we are here holding the space for that. But you have to dial the number, and you have to press 1. And so we are here to support you. You're not alone. Welcome, Michael.
As you complete that sentence, Jeannie, you remind me of the awesome America's Got Talent song that was sung by actually an Irish priest on AGT, and the last line of the song is, "You are not alone." Powerful. And the title of the song that he sang, what was the title of that song? If you Google it, if you want to give it a listen, I mean, it's just, his voice is so awesome. His name's Father Ray Kelly, and he speaks from the perspective, he sings a song from the perspective of someone who's basically there as a listening ear. And as that listening ear, he puts his song forward to people on, you know, hold to knowing that you're not alone. Anyway, it's powerful. And you know, when you shared that dream with me this morning, what was clear to me is that your mind is telling you that you've reached a whole new level in your process of being that space, of holding that space, of being that energetic presence in the world. So that's pretty sweet, pretty powerful.
Yeah, thank you.
I get to be blessed if you're doing that for me every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. So there's another piece, and I'm just looking in my phone for it, that I came across this morning that I thought was pretty cool. And, you know, the thing that really motivated me, my son's now 42, I guess. Yeah, 42. So it's 42 years ago. And I was doing this work, and back then, nobody got into my workshops without money. It was all about the money. You know, I'd come from the business world, and I'd given up a fairly lucrative business to step into teaching. And then when my son was born, I stood there. I can remember, you know, I got to catch him. We birthed him at home. And I got to catch him coming out of the womb and hold him, and marveling at that presence of love and thinking about his future. And I can remember so clearly thinking, if somebody doesn't do something about the way the world is going, then there's going to be a place for this kid to grow up. And quite literally, this body of work is what I've done about it from where I sit. And it wasn't long after that I made the shift out of charging for every workshop that I did to where it was, if you're not familiar with the model that we've used, basically for 40 years now, I've traveled. We're not traveling anymore, but traveled, and we paid our own expenses, and we did our workshops free. And a lot of people looked in a very puzzling way at me when I would say, well, that's what we do. Well, no, we even had churches say, no, you've got to charge money. It's like, well, if we have to charge money to come and speak at your church so that you can make money, so that we can make money, then we're not coming. We're going to do it free. There'll be money to be made. There'll be support, because at the end of each workshop, we would let people know the reason it's free is we're committed to giving it away, whether you have money or not. It's irrelevant. And if you've got money or you've got a talent that you can offer in support of this work, if it's benefited you, then support us with a donation. And for 40 years, that's what got this work traveling all over the globe. Now that we're settled in here taking care of Jeannie's dad and a new grandchild who's been circling there for 3 years and is here at least 3 days a week, we've gotten rid of our travel plans, and we're moving into a different way of expressing. But our commitment is still to make it available, and we make it available in both directions. We're not out there in front of people the way we used to be and say, okay, at the end of the workshop, if you want to donate, we pass the basket. We don't have the way to do that. With the radio show is kind of a similar thing. If it's benefiting you, please, jump on the website and offer a gift. But I came across a piece that the author is unknown, but here's his writing. It's titled "Growing Good Corn."
Michael, before you continue, move your microphone a little because it's breathy, and that way they'll be able to hear what you read really clear.
All right. Is that better?
Yes.
Good. Okay. There was once a farmer who grew award-winning corn. Each year, he entered his corn into the state fair where it won a blue ribbon. One year, a newspaper reporter interviewed him and learned something interesting about how he grew it. The reporter discovered that the farmer shared his seed corn with his neighbors. How can you afford to share your best corn seed with your neighbors when they're entering the corn competition with yours each year? The reporter asked. Why, sir, said the farmer, didn't you know? The wind picks up pollen from the ripening corn and swirls it from field to field. If my neighbors grow inferior corn, pollination will steadily degrade the quality of my corn. If I'm going to grow good corn, I must help my neighbors to grow good corn. He was very much aware of the connectedness of his life. His corn cannot improve unless his neighbor's corn also improves. So it is with our lives. Those who choose to live in serenity must help their neighbors to live in serenity. Those who choose to live well must help others to live well. For the value of life is measured by the lives it touches. And those who choose to be happy must help others to find happiness. For the welfare of each is bound up with the welfare of all. Is it possible, the writer says, to give away and become richer? Is it also possible to hold on too tightly and lose everything? Yes, the liberal man shall be rich. By watering others, he waters himself, says Proverbs 11:24 and 25. So I came across that this morning, and it kind of fits very well, sweetie, with your dream. And the idea without recompense, without turning it into commercial business. There's an interesting line in the movie, if you haven't watched it, Gods and Generals. It was made by Turner Broadcasting, and I understand that Ted Turner was a very, strong advocate for accuracy in Civil War, documentaries and such. And it's interesting. There's one scene in the film where, and I'm not sure. It's been several years since I saw the film. I saw it when it first came out. But there's one scene where I think it's Jackson talking to Lee, or Lee talking to Jackson, or someone along those lines. And what he says is, if we lose this war, commerce and the bankers are going to take over our country. And if you take a look, who gets to be president? What are most of the conversations about around president? Commerce, making a buck, rather than about human lives. And because commerce is involved in the game, commerce tends to support whatever increases what's in the hands of those who are in that commercial business. And everyone else tends to go down. If you look at our culture, it's really a conversation about rich and poor, the haves and the have-nots. I was reading yesterday that the stimulus that went out, which many people have complained about, raised more children out of poverty, like over 1 million children through that time. With all this COVID stuff and all going, over 1 million children were raised out of poverty, more than at any time since they've been tracking poverty levels of families and children. And yet commerce says, that's going to cost us too much money. But by the way, give us another piece of land on which we can drill and make billions. Commerce tends to be greedy. And if we've been taught greed, then we'll tend to create the kinds of separations that we're seeing exacerbated in our culture. And maybe it's time to, if one's found themselves in that posture, to start looking at a technology, and that's the whole idea of this technology, a technology that brings us back to our humanness, it brings us back to functioning out of a mind that functions, that behaves, that advocates for that which is based in love. It's interesting, in one of the Beatitudes, it says, and generally speaking, when the Greeks translated the first idea in the Beatitudes, it says, blessed are they. In Aramaic, nothing about blessing anything or anybody. In Aramaic, the word is tuvehun. It's a 3-part word. And basically what tuvehun means, so before each of the Beatitudes, it doesn't say blessed are they, blessed are they, blessed are they, blessed are they. It says, and of course, when this happens, one would be blessed. But it misses out on the point. A latent neural structure, latent being something unconscious, implanted by the Creator to guide us to happiness and well-being, become our conscious possession. Yuhu. What the Beatitudes, what Yeshua was saying 2,000 years ago, is that inside of each of us there is a guidance system, and it's designed to take us to our highest state of well-being and happiness. And if we lost ourselves in commercial interest, if we've lost ourselves in hostility and fear and greed and rage and separation and drama and trauma and divorce and hate, if we've lost ourselves in that, then that neural structure, literally that instruction set that's in the mind of every person, has been subverted. And so when you read the Beatitudes properly from the Aramaic, what you see is, here's a set of instructions for activating this neural structure that's designed to guide you to happiness and well-being, not designed to make you more money, not designed to give you more power or more political clout or more any of that stuff. It's designed to support the truth of who you are. And one of those Beatitudes, properly translated, says, a latent neural structure implanted by the Creator to guide you to happiness and well-being becomes your conscious possession. You who engage in just and fair behavior between people. Just and fair behavior was the key. And sadly, when greed and the root thought disorders that in this particular culture I would offer, I observe taking humanity out of their humanness, are based in greed. Are based in there's not enough, and therefore I have to get more. And no matter how much more, there has to be more. As opposed to the guiding principle of the mind, the guardrails on the highway to reason being those of just and fair behavior between people. If you want to check out the Beatitudes a little further, you can go to our website, whyagain.org, and if you click on the link in the upper left-hand corner that says Start Here, that link will walk you all the way through to a place where you'll see all the different worksheets and posters that we have. And one of the posters is the Beatitudes poster. You might want to give that a look. Or we've got the poster printed on a nice piece of parchment. It's in two colors. It's red and blue. It's kind of a nice, it's like a standard 10 by 13 frame size. You can order it, I don't know, they're a couple $, something like that, on our website, but you can just print it off as well. But when you realize what was understood about the guardrails for keeping the human mind on track, it's so profound and so powerful in supporting us in returning to real, true human life, really moving into what we are as human beings. And, our chapter in our book that we've been working on, we just started yesterday or the day before, into chapter 22, What is Learning? We're talking about building brain cells with this character, Richard, in the book. If you're following along, we're on page 147. And so we're offering that there are ways to understand and keep your mind in harmony. And if you've been brought up in a world that's based in greed, hostility, and fear, then it's going to be a major learning process, especially if you come from many generations of that, which is kind of what this seems to be running the world pretty much. Then it's going to take time to build the brain cells and turn the ship of behavior around into something that's really in harmony with human life. And so just to offer this thought to Richard that, you sit in front of a computer, Richard, for the first time, and do you even know how to turn it on? And when you turn it on, do you even know what a C prompt means? When you know what a C prompt means, do you know how to get to a program? How much do you know about it? And it's like, well, nothing really when I started. So now I have to build brain cells. And if you remember, I can think back to the early days of working on computers, and now I can do most anything I need to do on a computer, although once in a while I have to turn to Jeannie because she's got the brain cells built on a whole other level for operating computers than I do. Thank you, Jeannie. But I can remember back in the early days, and you might just think about it using this as a metaphor. How many hours has it taken you to get to the skill level where you can use your computer the way you use it? The kinds of things that I do, Jeannie does. If I went back and I tried to do a record of it, I'd be up in the many thousands of hours. It's interesting that we'll invest that kind of time in something like using a tool that's outside of us, but we won't invest that kind of time, or many people won't invest that kind of time into learning how to restructure and use their own minds. And our invitation is to stick around long enough and to take the time to build the brain cells to move into a totally different world. So Richard responds to this idea of the computer metaphor. So setting computer to work takes learning. Getting the computer to work takes learning. Is that what you call building brain cells, Richard interjected? Yes. And in life, we live out of the realities for which we have brain cells. Life does not punish. It only gives back what we ask for. Now, it's kind of fun, many of you are aware that one of the things that Jeannie and I do is we are film buffs. So movies are oftentimes our intermission. And back several weeks ago, we came across a new series a couple months ago on Netflix. And some of it's pretty coarse and gross in its sexual references. It's kind of an interesting series. It's called Lucifer. And basically, Lucifer, the devil, quote unquote, decides he's going to take a vacation from hell, and he goes to Los Angeles. And it's really quite an interesting setup, the way they've structured it. And he ends up meeting a young woman who's a detective, and reluctantly moving out of his old patterns of using people and, all the stuff that he does, to caring for someone. So we're in what I think about the 4th season of Lucifer. And there have been 2 interesting portrayals, so powerfully on track with the work. They go back and forth, show after show, and they have conflicts, and they make up, and, they're not in a relationship, but her partner, Satan becomes an advisor. Pardon me, they don't refer to him as Satan, they refer to him as the devil. The devil becomes an advisor to the Los Angeles Police Department, and they solve all kinds of cases together. But all the personal conflicts go on. And he's starting to grapple with, because he's the classic, everything in his life is everybody else's fault. He's got somebody to blame for everything, and the main one he blames is his father. So there are lots of conversations about Dad, and his brother comes to Earth, who's another angel, and, they're always talking about Dad and how controlling Dad is, and Mom, and, it's humorous, yet there's a thread of such deep truth in it. And we're just at the stage where he's starting to confront himself, and he comes to the conclusion of, my God, here I have been blaming everybody else, and it's me. It's all about me. He has this realization. It's not everybody else. And then he's got a therapist. So he goes in and sits with the therapist, and he finally comes to the conclusion of, and says it with quite a great deal of emphasis, why do I hate myself so much? So he starts to deal with his self-hatred. And there's a byline or a sideline where there's a prophecy that, when he comes back to the earth and meets his first love, that evil will be released upon the earth, unleashed. And so there's, a lot of back and forth about that. And he's like he's going to stop it. No, I don't want that. I care. I care about these humans. I don't want that to happen. I mean, yeah, my job has been punishing those who do wrong, and there's a lot of talk about punishment throughout it. But he wants to stop it. And there's a thing that happens. He looks like a normal human being, but when he gets really upset, he goes into what he calls his devil face, and his eyes turn red, and he becomes the personification of the devil. And so this prophecy is enacted. It's triggered into activity, and what it does, like, he can normally just turn on and turn off this quote unquote devil face, where he looks pretty gross, and the red eyes, he can turn them on and off. But as the interaction with his first love, and I won't give it away telling what that's part of the story is if you choose to watch it, but he's so enmeshed with her that he can't pull away. And so this starts to create a transformation in his body. I mean, it is so on track with the cause of disease. And his face, when he puts on this devil face, his face turns red, and it's knobby and gnarly and distorted. Well, his body starts to make that kind of transformation. It just starts on the back of his hand, and then it moves from his hand to his arm, and ultimately takes over his whole body, and there he is. He can't get back to the human appearance, but his physiology is this very gross-looking devil with the wings that have horns on it and all of that. It's kind of like the old icons on European buildings. In any event, he's like, oh my God, I can't change this. I'm lost. It's done. I can't do anything about it. And this woman that he's been attracted to, they end up talking about it. And she believes in him. She knows who he is. She's seen him as the devil, understands, but she sees the good in him. The upshot, the visual of it was just so profoundly on track with exactly what happens to our so-called physical bodies, because he goes through this metamorphosis where he cannot return to his normal, attractive young man physical form. He's grossly transformed physiologically into this devil figure. And, it's like, this evil is going to be unleashed on the whole world because of him. And he's like, oh, repentance. He's like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And he's talking to her, and he's like, there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to have to, go back to hell. He's come on vacation, and he's now years later, and he's like, I'm not going back there. But he comes to the conclusion that in order to save humanity, he's got to go back to hell. And she's with him, and she's like, no, but you can't go, and, we can change this. He says, but I have so much self-hatred. And I want to forgive myself, but I don't know how. Of course, he's using forgiveness in the way the culture uses it. But it's interesting. I want to, but I don't know how. And the moment he speaks of wanting to, he starts to metamorphose back into his human, attractive young man physical form. And his disease literally evaporates. And the interesting thing, and I would love to know who wrote the script and who put this together, because it's profoundly powerful, was just, literally to time in this film this metamorphosis from full-blown, gross-looking devil form into an attractive young man again, literally begins the instant he expresses his willingness. He brings up forgiveness. He says, I want to forgive. I don't know how. I want to. And literally the minute he expresses that willingness, a transformation begins. And I'm telling this story because that's exactly how it works. You know, as long as I'm in the belief about my hate and my fear, and I've always got an attack and a story for everybody, and, well, you know, whatever. Now I can say, oh, I'd like to change that. I don't like that about me. But that isn't the willingness that comes from, I really, truly realize to change, and I'm willing to go there. And that when one steps into that willingness, there is an uplifting flow and an uplifting force within us that is activated by that willingness. In the first century Aramaic language, it's called Ruka Dekudsha. Those words by the Greeks were translated as the Holy Spirit. There's nothing about a disembodied spirit being in the words Ruka Dekudsha, but it speaks of an actual literal elemental force that exists in us that undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. And it's the invitation, not the flippant, oh yeah, well, I'll turn it over to the Holy Spirit, to Ruka Dekudsha, but a real true willingness and clearly framing in the mind and setting a goal to move to a different place in one's life than generations of history would dictate one must live. Most people are so engrossed in what they've learned in the brain cells from the past that they can't lift their eyes from their pain and their trauma and their turmoil, especially when they've been triggered by some event in their lives. And for me, this film just so powerfully portrayed that the instant he went into a sincere willingness, there was support, assistance, and transformation. Doesn't mean you have to know it all.
And can I add?
Jeannie? Please.
And
yes,
she was
absolutely.
holding love. Like,
oh, yeah.
while he was in process, she was just standing there being the space of love, regardless of how ugly he looked. And
yeah, previously
and then
she turned away from him because he was so gross looking. But yeah, that's so profoundly part of the puzzle, Gene. Your dream.
Yeah, and there was another part in, not at that part, but at another time, he had expressed that hell didn't have locked doors, but that everybody was locked into their own guilt and blame and punishment for themselves in an eternal loop. They just would keep repeating it over and over again. The why is this happening to me again?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of very powerful principles. Yeah. Yeah, actually, several times through the film, they show different people and how they're stuck in this. They call it a hell loop. Well, it's your own. And in fact, earlier in the film, there's another level of it where he himself, Lucifer, acknowledges that he has his own hell loop. It's like, oh my God, I'm doing this to myself. It isn't them. And he teaches others, you're doing this to yourself. Well, yeah, you've got all this cooperation, all these people that seem to be doing it to you, but the truth is you're doing it to yourself. And he realizes that for himself. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. We're in season 4, and they've got 6 seasons, so it'll be interesting to see what unfolds, because this is certainly a climax point in it for, and we just watched that last night where he just is so deeply moved by the suffering of humanity that he's been a part of that he wants to change it all. And what he comes back to and down to is he realizes and demonstrates very overtly that he needs to change himself. And yeah, you're so right, Jeannie, where previously she had trouble holding the space, and she actually separates from him for a time period to do some work and come back to where she can hold the space. And then you can see her just standing there as that sweet presence of love as he's going through this. Oh my, I don't know how to forgive. And she is as gross as he looks. She's just embracing him fully in present love. It's really profoundly powerful, and a great demonstration. Like, it's probably been, Jeannie, 2 seasons since she found out. I mean, in the beginning, season 1, he tells her, "Oh, I'm the devil," and it's like, "Ha ha, yeah, right, okay. Well, you've got this metaphor for your life. You're evil, and blah blah blah." But then, about the beginning of season 3, he shows her he actually is the devil. He does this whole devil transformation face and such, and she is just so blown away she can't handle it. And it shows her processing. And then she gets to the point where, for this ultimate presence of ugly and evil, she's the space. She literally is. There's nothing in her to be resonated by his ugly appearance and evil eminence. I'm not even sure how to say it, but just that she's not impacted by it anymore. She's done her work and she's clean and clear, and is the space of active present love. Pretty powerful metaphor, pretty powerful to look at. And again, I'd love to know who put this together that had the brain cells to understand things, healing at this level. It's pretty awesome. So if you've got Netflix and you get a chance, give a look at the TV series Lucifer. Any other thoughts for you on that, Jeannie? Because you're right. I mean, I wasn't thinking in those terms, but she just so profoundly is the space.
Yeah. That's all I can think of right now. Something, though, you said triggered, we played a replay yesterday, but day before that, there was conversation with a couple of different people about getting past what they've learned. And you said something earlier about, people, learning to be a certain way and not getting past that. And it made me think of when I went back to college, one of my psych papers that I wrote was about learned helplessness. And one of the things I think for people to get past and to be willing to make a change is to look at what they've learned and that it's not right, or it's, that there's something different. The examples that I used in my paper had to do with dogs, but it's the same thing with humans. One example was they put these dogs, and this is cruel, but they did an experiment, and they put these dogs in a cage or a box or something, and they would shock them. And at first, of course, the dog would, jump and howl and try to get away. And when it realized it couldn't, then it just became very passive to the abuse and just, laid down and took it, and it didn't try to fight it. And then another example was this dog, it knew that when it needed to go outside, the owner had to open both the big wooden door and then the screen door for it to go out. And it had, that's how it was all the time. Well, something happened and the screen door got messed up, so it was just a frame. And they would open the hardwood door and the dog would just stand there. Now, it could have just stepped right through. I mean, they even showed it. You can step through this door. It doesn't have to be open. And the dog had been trained so much that door had to be open. They could open the frame and then the dog would go out. But just, it had learned that it couldn't go through that door. And people do the same thing, like I got married at the age of 16 and I stayed in an abusive situation for 3 years, and I kind of got like that dog, at first I would fight it, and then after a while just passively accepted the abuse. And that people get to, they look at their situation that it's helpless and they can't do anything about it. And so they just accept the way things are and don't try to change. And don't try to see that what they've learned is not necessarily accurate, and that they can step through the door. They can, do something different. And so that kind of came to me when I don't even remember now who it was we were talking to day before yesterday. But that is definitely a real thing, that we learn helplessness, and we have to unlearn that. We have to be willing to do something different.
And that's why the use of the tools is so important. It's like the forgiveness process is the unlearning. And, if it were simply a matter of building new brain cells for something new, it wouldn't be that big a deal. But if you've got a mind that thinks it already knows, if that mind isn't willing to look at the truth, if that mind isn't willing to receive feedback and look honestly, and you can always tell when the mind is lying to itself and not being honest. And here's how you tell. If a new piece of information shows up, that mind goes into stress and they attack the source of the information. Rather than taking a breath and going, I never looked at that way. If up comes the ugly, attack and viciousness, put down of the, remember when one lives in blockage of truth and truth shows up, when truth is shown to a mind that's in blockage of truth, the stress level goes up in that mind. When the stress level goes up, it's attached to one of two things. It's either attached to getting rid of the information that shows it the blockage. That's the John the Baptist syndrome. John the Baptist delivered information to the king and queen they didn't want to hear, and what did? They took off his head. So their stress was attached to getting rid of the source of the information. I like to kind of tongue-in-cheek offer that there were two, and if you decide to play John the Baptist for somebody, there are two skills you need to develop. One is you need to know when to duck, and the second one is you need to when to hold the mirror up. Because when you're delivering truth to people who are in blockage of truth, depending on their power person issues, depending on how their power person treated them, they can be pretty vile and pretty vicious. And so being willing to receive information instead of turning to a power person dynamic and attacking means that you shift where the stress is attached and now are connected. And when you have that stress go up, you connect it to, I'm in hostility, I'm in rage, I'm in fear, I'm in sadness, whatever it happens to be. I can go into self-correction. This is something, instead of projecting it into your brain's image of someone else, this is something that I can take responsibility for, and I can do healing of this dynamic in me rather than being subject to this dis-ease. Again, that was the beauty of the visual with this whole thing with Lucifer. He's transformed into this vile-looking creature, and he expresses with great enthusiasm, I want to forgive, I don't know how, and bingo, his transformation starts to happen. Total, like within minutes, total physical transformation. And so it is with the healing of our so-called diseases. So we live out of the realities for which we have brain cells. And oftentimes we think life punishes us, but, if somebody's stuck in a hell loop, it's because they hold a belief that they are supposed to be punished. We've done over the years a lot of work in the prisons, and one of the things we found in interviewing prisoners was that the majority of people in prison felt like they needed to be there in order to be punished for the wrong that they'd done. Now, when you start really looking, punishment never makes people do the right thing. It might, through fear, have them avoid doing, quote-unquote, the wrong. But here's what happens. Because that energy is never addressed, it builds and builds and builds until it breaks through, and it becomes some kind of extreme, oftentimes criminal activity. Once we remove punishment from the equation, and there was a point where, in this Lucifer series, where the woman that we're talking about was considering a form of punishment for him, because that was his thing. His main thing was that, I'm here to punish those people who've done wrong, and I love my job. She considers that, but she processes through it, moves through her own trauma, her own mind's blockage of truth, and arrives at a space where she can really, truly be that space of love. So the mind is much like life. It doesn't do what you want it to do. It does what you tell it to do. So again, it only gives us what we ask for. If the realities we hold in brain cells call for what looks like punishment, life will be limited to doing just that again and again until we change. Just like the computer, when you learn how life works, its creative capacity will open up to you. Developing a deeper comprehension of how we learn and refining our understanding of the difference between reality and actuality will make this work easier to grasp. In the Aramaic culture, the distinction between actuality and reality was well understood. Through the brain, we can only see and grasp a reality that is in our brain cell structure, though we may think we see and understand what is happening in the outside world. There is much more to life than what is seen through our limited senses. And so the idea of taking these tools and correcting the mind so that everything that is held by the mind is accurate and true about actuality, rather than the mind replacing what actually happened with an internally generated reality that distorts the truth of the moment. And hostility and fear, when they move within human physiology, are telling us that if hostility or fear is moving in us, our mind is using corrupt data to build that perceptual construct. And so they are the places when there's corrupt data that forgiveness needs to be applied. You say, well, but did you see what that person did? What they did was really terrible. It's like, something I watched. It was really terrible. I agree, 200%. But notice that shy of a punch in the nose, they can't hurt you. But if what they said, quote unquote, in your mind hurts you, if what they did in your mind, quote unquote, hurts you, it's because hurt is the internal energy that you're holding, and hurt can be forgiven. We're not designed for hurt. Hurt is just a signal. It's like the fire alarm. Hurt tells us that we're engaging in an energy that doesn't belong within the structure. Corrupt data, hostility, and fear. And just notice, it's pretty simple. Have you ever been accused of doing something that you absolutely never did, or saying something you absolutely never said? Of course, everybody's been accused of that. Go back to 1, 2, 10, 20, 50 times where that happened, and notice that every time the person who was accusing you was in some form of hostility or fear. Now, what does that mean? The person who lives in blocks of people, that means that they're wrong. No, here's what it means. When you're in hostility or fear, your mind is a liar. It is not telling you the truth about anything, yourself or anything that you look at. That's what it means. And so, literally, forgiveness needs to be applied to those energetic patterns inside of us that create hostility or fear, so that those patterns of hostility or fear are removed, and we're no longer functioning out of corrupt data. Then we can be in the most disastrous of situations, as we described in this film or this TV series, and love will be conscious, active, and present in you. It cannot be taken away by the events of the world. It can only be taken away when we enter into denial. What is denial? Denial is the act of thinking or speaking as though something outside of us is the cause of what's happening inside of us. When we deny, we have to hide the part of our mind that holds the truth. which means we dissociate from that part of our mind. It means that part of our mind is no longer ours to change. As long as it's in hiding and whenever it is resonated into activity, the mind will lie to us and we'll believe that its lie is the truth because we saw it. We literally, that perceptual construct was a full-blown visual image that showed us what somebody else did to us. And it's a lie. And so it takes great wisdom every time the mind comes up with some form of hostility or fear to choose to enter into forgiveness and look at the root of that experience that corrupted that part of the mind and bring healing to it, bring forgiveness to it. And the willingness to do that is what we're here to support. So once again, there's much more to life than what is seen through our limited senses. And so that's our reading from the chapter, What is Learning? From Why Is This Happening to Me? And by the way, this is chapter 22, page 148. And if you don't have a copy of the book, we can't sell you a new one because it's out of print. However, you can go to eBay or to Amazon, and there are always copies available used on both of those sites. You know, we're used bookstores all over. So we fortunately got enough copies out there that they're pretty much spread around the country and around the world. So they're still available there. And or you're welcome to go to our website. There are actually two ways you can acquire the book from our website. You can download it free. Again, if you want to pay for it. If you want to support us, then buy it. If you don't want it, then download it free. So you can go and download it in English and German and Spanish and Farsi, and there's some of it in Thai, German, several different languages. And or you can also purchase a recording, an MP3 of actually the latest version of the book. We have not published anything other than the original, published in writing, anything other than the original version of the book. But I did a significant amount of editing for actually the version that was printed in Swedish. And unfortunately, we don't have Swedish available on our website because it's the Swedish publisher was concerned that they would lose money if they put it on the website free. So we unfortunately don't have that, but you can download it in many different printed forms, but there is an MP3 recording of that version of the book, the full reading from start to finish. Actually, I play the character or myself in the book, and then a character actor plays the part of Richard and actually plays it very powerfully. So that recording is available in our catalog of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And, gee, we're down to about 10 minutes. So, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything else happening in the chat room?
We're actually down to 7 minutes, and no, nobody has a hand up. So somebody press 1. We have time for a quick question.
Yeah. Or even a slow question. It doesn't matter. A question, slow or quick. It's interesting how invariably the language that most people default to is quick question. Another interesting default that I notice is happening virtually everywhere. I don't care whether you go to the grocery store or the post office or, technical support online, or you're calling into a store online. It's virtually universal. Something I notice has been replaced in, and this can't be an accident. And I wonder who's behind it and why. But if you notice that the words "thank you" in a commercial transaction are virtually non-existent today, you notice that the almost universal response is no problem. I mean, I marvel, and I actually stop them mid-sentence. Oftentimes, while I'm on phone with tech support or a problem with a product that we bought, and they'll say, "Yeah, well, okay, well, we'll just do this and this and this and this." No problem. I say, "Excuse me. Yes, this is a problem. We're talking about a problem. Please let go of this telling me there's no problem. We're talking about a problem." But it's interesting how language and how universal that's become. What do you suppose happened to thank you? And I, for one, would like to start a movement where we invite these people, and instead of telling us no problem, to actually express a thank you, which is what a previous culture did. So anyway, Jeannie?
Or a you're welcome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no problem. It's just amazing. So if you're out there in listener land, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you in our control panel, you can't talk to us directly, but you can phone into the show at 563-999-3581, 563-999-3581, and if you push 1, if you call that number, you'll be listening to the show on your phone, and if you push 1, a hand will go up and Gene will introduce you by your area code. If you're not using the forgiveness tool as yet, we suggest that you go to our website, whyagain.org. Upper left-hand corner, a link that says Start Here. I'll walk you through the whole process. Everything we know about it is there, free. There's several different worksheets that go with different workshops. There are several different versions of the main tool of forgiveness that we teach. Acquaint yourself with them. There are at least 20 different radio shows where either Dr. Tim or Jeannie or myself have walked someone through the whole forgiveness process. So there are lots of instructions on the worksheet. You can do the worksheet right there live on the website, on our Why Again website, or you can go to your phone's app store, and if you type in the words Heartland, Heartland, one word, Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness, you will be looking at the world's only forgiveness app. And you can download that free. It's a very private app. It will only ask you for one permission, and that is for the app to use the internet. It won't ask you if they can dial your phone or send text or take pictures, all that crap that apps ask for. It's only one thing. Once you've done a worksheet in the app will offer the opportunity for you to save it as a PDF, and it will ask for a second permission, and that would be to save the PDF to your storage device, your phone or whatever. Other than that, there are no permissions required. We purposely kept it, realizing that people would do some very private things. We purposely kept the app as private as anyone could possibly have an app. And it's powerful. There are two different versions of the worksheet on it. Jeannie has added the commitment. It has a children's game for introducing kids to the forgiveness process, the Dragon Klingon game. The commitment is now on the app, and we're actually looking at a few other upgrades that we're going to do to it to expand its usefulness. Ultimately, I have a vision that somewhere down the road we'll have all of the tools on the app. That we'll have a communication tool, and we'll have access to everything that we do. But it's a process, and so if there's anything you'd like to do to support us in that process, maybe you've got a skill. I would love to come up with, someone who do these whiteboard drawings that you see, instructional videos, and take things and put them into instructional form. If anybody happens to have that skill and would like to step up to the plate and assist us in making this available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. If you speak a language, read, write, translate a language that our book is not translated into, it would be awesome if you chose to step up to the plate and translate the book so it would be available to anyone in the world that speaks the language that you speak, if we don't have it translated already. And so if you've got any way you'd like to bring support forward into this work, that would be awesome. And or if there's any way we can support you, that's exactly what we're here to do. And we appreciate you being a part of the show. We hold the space that you have the best year yet of your eternal life. Gracias. Thanks for joining us.